We'll dive right into the topic, though. So, you guys probably heard the news. We were talking about it throughout the week, the three of us in our little group chat. And an unprecedented move in a year defined by unprecedented challenges. Warner has made the decision to send 17, count them, 17 movies to HBO Max for 31 days, the same day they open in theaters. Now, I'm not going to list all these movies because a lot of these movies I think are still not on our radar. A lot of them are, a lot of them aren't. There's a Clint Eastwood movie in there. There's a Will Smith produced movie in there. But some of the biggest ones are The Suicide Squad. That's the reboot directed by James Gunn. There's The Matrix 4. Yes, there's another one of those coming. Dune. There's Space Jam: A New Legacy, which we actually talked about a couple weeks ago. The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, as yet another Conjuring movie. I've lost track. I think it's the fourth one, I want to say.
It's the third of The Conjuring, but of that universe, I have lost count too.
That universe is convoluted, to say the least. Godzilla vs. Kong, Tom and Jerry, Mortal Kombat, and I don't think this movie's on many people's radar amongst them, but I can't wait for it with Daniel Kaluuya, Judas and the Black Messiah. So I feel that's worth mentioning as well. But so those are some of the movies, big movies, I'll say. And this sent shockwaves throughout the movie industry and the theater industry as well. And it comes as Wonder Woman 1984 is set to premiere on HBO Max for a month on Christmas Day. And Warner claims that this is a one-time move, but this is the definition of a Pandora's box situation, insofar that if it succeeds, it's going to be hard for them not to do this, at least going forward. And I think one of the biggest moves outside of money, which these movie studios, I know they're infallible, but they need in what is ultimately a lost year, to say the least. Warner is also responsible for HBO Max. That's their streaming service. And they are lagging behind projections for subscribers and users ever since they launched earlier this year. So this is a way to entice subscribers while keeping theaters in mind. You got to give them credit, because there's a factor of exclusivity tied here, because these movies will only be available to stream on HBO Max for 31 days and in conjunction with their theatrical release. So that takes into consideration that a lot of the country theaters are not open, or at least major parts of the country theaters are not open. There are so many ways to kind of break this down, but we're gonna do it 6 ways to Sunday for the next half hour or so. But the move understandably unnerves many in the film industry and those like us, talking to the three of us and probably a lot of viewers, who value the communal experience of movie going. And there are many parties affected here, I think, too. I mean, I'll just throw this out. I'll just say this, and then I'll throw it out to you guys for your thoughts. There's a lot more parties here affected than I think people realize, because Warner kept this under wraps. They evidently did not tell really anybody outside of the board before this news went public. So you got to think, too, on big movies like The Suicide Squad and Matrix 4, you got to think that there's some first dollar gross contracts in play between directors and actors in that situation as well, where the profitability of these films is going to be very hazy now, since Warner is essentially mortgaging profit in hopes of bolstering their streaming service. And just a couple weeks ago, there was reports that Netflix was in talks to shell out $250 million for Godzilla vs. Kong. Godzilla vs. Kong cost about $155 million to make. That would have instantly put it in a break-even situation, but Warner decided to roll the dice and say, let's go with theaters, put it on HBO Max, maybe we'll get enough subscribers to make a profit on this, along with these other 16 movies. There's a lot to unpack here, gentlemen, and I want to talk about the future of movie theaters later on. But general thoughts, I kind of just gave an overview to the best of my abilities. I'll start with Dominic. What do you have to say about Warner's seismic move?
This is the story that I was waiting to talk about back in the summer. I'm not, now that we know how this plays out in retrospect, it's not surprising that people are so resistant to wanting to go to theaters, and that the money has kind of reflected that in much of the sense. But this was honestly I was waiting for this story to happen earlier, but hey, better late than never. First and foremost, I know this is mainly industry talk, but really my first thought is, okay, thank God, here in this worst third wave yet, hopefully this will keep people home. the first 31 days of a movie's release. That's obviously the most when people standard. That's when most people go out to see a new feature. And my immediate reaction is that's going to save some lives. I genuinely believe that, and I think it's pretty hard to argue. So that's my first reaction. My second reaction is, man, to be a fly on the wall or to like tap into some of these these screaming messages. Tom Cruise in Tropic Thunder. I forgot the dude's name, but he's in prosthetics and he's like he's angry ass movie producer just yelling at people just back and forth. I would love, like, really picture this. Billions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars are being moved about here, and this is being stopped in his tracks or being held off or being followed over, and the stuff we'll never know. We'll probably never know the numbers of, but god damn, that is awesome. Just to think, just the spectacle of that. And in terms of how the moves overall, looking at the movie specifically, it's actually the movie. Like, I was expecting to see, like, obviously this is HBO's. This is the movies that Warner Group and HBO has in their arsenal. But the thing, this isn't quite Disney yet. We'll see. We'll wait for those movies. I'm actually kind of hesitant because looking at those list of movies, like, what is the biggest movie that I'll ask you guys too. What is the biggest movie you think that is on there? Just based on, like, what do you think would gather the most box office in its opening 2 weeks with no pandemic? What do you think?
And it's
Suicide
opening
Squad.
2 weeks or entirely?
I guess. No. Let's say month. Sorry, let's say month because that's the period of time that will be in at home. It'll be on streaming.
I want to say
Joe says Suicide Squad.
I say that or In the Heights. Like, I think it's one of those two. I feel like In the Heights would be like a big sleeper hit over the summer.
Are we gonna ignore the Matrix 4 here? Are we gonna ignore Godzilla
that's what I
versus
was
Kong?
initially leading to. Yeah, the Matrix 4.
Are we gonna ignore those?
Because I feel like the capital on like Suicide Squad, one, it's a superhero movie, and two, it's specifically Suicide Squad, which just has bad vibes still hanging from it from the previous whatever. But yeah, I feel like Matrix 4, maybe Dune, but I honestly, Joe, you bring up a good one. I didn't even think about In the Heights until just now because
In the
Hamilton
Heights could be a sleeper. It could be a sleeper.
Because
I feel like
I look at the Matrix 4 and it's like, I feel like people today are like, look, man, if that dude isn't killing somebody over his dead dog, I don't care if he's in a movie. Because if he's not John Wick, I feel like nobody cares. Dune, I feel like it's gonna be the same situation as Blade Runner 2049.
That's true.
Amazing film, doesn't make money at the box office. Godzilla vs Kong. If you look at the box office of each of those movies as they've been coming out, it's been getting smaller and smaller with each release, from the 2014 to Kong to King of Monsters.
That's true.
Space Jam, maybe because of the kids. Tom and Jerry, maybe because of the kids. I don't think anybody cares about the Mortal Kombat movie. I think that's just another video game thing. It would make like $50 million. That's probably about it. That's why I say it's Suicide Squad or In the Heights, because it's like Suicide Squad, you got that superhero thing to it. You have James Gunn, which I feel like the nerds are going crazy for.
But is there a chance Suicide Squad winds up being, and I'm not talking about in quality, but I'm talking about in perception. And I get James Gunn's a selling point. The only thing I worry about too with Suicide Squad is it going to appear like Fantastic Four? Like that's my other thing. It's like we're getting another Suicide Squad movie because the first one wasn't good, and that's the only thing I worry about. If I had to bet on it, I would say for the first month though, I mean, you got me thinking In the Heights now. I would say I would still lean Matrix 4. I really would.
I would actually argue against In the Heights specifically because of the scenario I set, which is that there's no pandemic. Right. So I don't know. How much of a COVID boost do you think Hamilton got?
A lot.
Like the release of Hamilton on Disney Plus, probably significant, but it probably would have. I mean, that deal was made between Disney Plus and the Hamilton whatever long before.
That's true. Yeah, I remember people were excited about it.
So maybe not. Maybe I'm defeating my own point here, or maybe I'm bringing up a moot point. and then Many Saints of Newark. Just the name alone, as much as I appreciate that name, the fact that it's not named The Sopranos probably takes away from it. Unfortunately.
I know. Why the hell didn't they call that? Why the hell didn't they call that The Sopranos Saints of Newark? Like that. Like I always complain about titles being overloaded. They should have called it that.
Artistically, I respect that title, but from a marketing standpoint, I'm like,
I didn't know that was the Sopranos. I didn't know that was the Sopranos prequel beforehand.
Neither did I.
The other question I think we have to ask too, and this is just something I wonder. I don't know. I don't think it's going to be the case, but I think it's worth noting. I wonder if HBO Max subscriptions aren't as high by mid-2021, and granted, how the world's going to look then, we don't even know. But I wonder if subscriptions aren't as high as projected, if some of the latter releases that are going to be more towards the end of 2020, like Dune and The Matrix 4, I wonder if they're going to be scrapped for HBO Max. Like, 'cause if you think of the best case scenario, this is going to be a model going forward for Warner. But if maybe it's not as successful in bolstering long-term subscribers, you wonder if they're going to say, like, okay, we're just going to send these to theaters. We're not even going to put them on HBO Max. Because if it is successful, though, I think there's a good chance Warner starts pulling out money of the and resources out of the theatrical game and focuses more on their subsidized, streaming service, HBO Max in that case. It's just something to consider.
Just to clarify, from that previous list we were kind of discussing, debating, Wonder Woman doesn't count because that was always going to be I guess Wonder Woman should count because we're specifically talking about that. But
well, I mean, this is their 2021 slate. Like, yeah,
2021 slate. Okay, that's true. Right. But yeah, I just wanted to bring up that mini discussion just because I wonder, because like there's no Marvel movies in there, which is like the fourth wave of Marvel movies now. Kind of an important one. I mean, you could argue they're all important, but like an important one in that it's the post-Endgame, right?
Yeah.
And Marvel was pivoting. Oh, are they going to continue to pivot to TV, which through Disney Plus, or are they going to continue with the movies? And that's I'm sure they will, but how much of the investment is that going to go? And that's a whole secondary discussion in and of itself.
I know Disney's all about making money, but like, I feel like it's better to wait. I know it's like, oh my God, get everybody in as much as possible. I feel like, honestly, after Endgame and Far From Home, it was like, people are just like, okay, I'm good. Like, I can take a break from superhero movies for a while. Me. Like, and like, knowing that like Black Widow was right around the corner, it was like, Jesus Christ. Now that I had like a year off from Marvel movies, it's like, I'm ready to go back into this phase whenever they are. Like, whenever.
Yeah, and just the fact that there's no Marvel movies on there. There's no there wasn't a Fast and Furious. What are the other big ones here?
Jurassic Park,
Jurassic World.
Money wise, those make bank, dude. So yeah, that is significant.
I'll also throw this out there too. I think another reason Warner makes this move too, again because HBO Max subscribers aren't what they want them to be. I think it's also a great way to entice subscribers and then lure them to stay with original content coming. Because that's kind of what Netflix did initially. Granted, Netflix wasn't owning the properties in which they were allowing streamers to watch, but I think that's another element of this too. I'm trying to get like the logistical angle of it down too. I think there's more to that because there are going to be a lot of originals on HBO Max coming pretty soon too.
But the significant thing here with this story is that someone finally pulled the trigger, and it's someone significant. Yeah. It's Warner Group. And they use probably their greatest asset, just as probably as a company they own so much. I don't exactly know, but in my opinion, it is HBO. That is just artistically and commercially. That is one of their biggest things, and which is rare to have. And they freaking got it, dude.
If Disney pulls the trigger next, that's it. I think I think everybody else follows.
Exactly. Yeah. That was what I was going to bring up next. Is that now that Warner and HBO have pulled the trigger on this, does Disney follow suit?
Well, yeah, Warner's big, but if Disney goes in, then it's the Thanos snap of the fingers. That.